Welcome everyone everywhere to the Elite Thinking Club. I'm Chris Jules Julian and I'm joined today by Liz, Lucas and Chris. You all right, guys?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey.
Feeling mega, feeling amazing. We've been smashing out these conspiracy videos and I'm loving it. Honestly, I feel like it's pretty much what we're mostly about at the Elite Thinking Club. We talk about everything and anything. And yeah, we've been smashing episodes on that. So last one we just did was about the moon landings. And if you haven't done so already, check it out. And also, if you're new to us, hit the subscribe button. Definitely, just so you know you get a notification when the next episode gets released. So tonight, this episode, we're going to be talking about 9/11. We're going to talk about when the Twin Towers got hit by. We're just going to go in with that. So yeah, what do you believe and what do you know about 9/11 and the Twin Towers? But before we begin, right, you cannot change anything unless you're willing to understand it, and you cannot understand it unless you're willing to explore it. A good debate doesn't get ugly. We may talk of things that make people feel vulnerable. Beliefs held sacred may be challenged because of life experiences. We are not trying to make people wrong or to incite a riot, but simply explore. Welcome to the Elite Thinking Club. So let's do this. Let's talk about 9/11.
Being American, born in America, half my family in America. 9/11, horrendous moment in America, in the world, in history. Where do I start? Where do I start on this one? Well, we all know it shouldn't have happened. And I think most of us will remember the horrific sights on the news and the photographs and all the people that lost their lives, all the people that had to work through that horrendous experience. And I think it changed all of our lives. Even if we weren't in America, it changed all of our lives because it made us all stop and think about what can happen in the world, what can happen, what we don't know about. It definitely changed America, and it definitely caused a huge ripple effect to other parts of the world from that happening, which I'm sure yourselves took part in, Chris, going to Afghan. So yeah, my family in America found it an atrocious act and a very crazy time. And I don't personally know anybody that was in the Twin Towers. Yeah, I'm kind of a bit stuck for words really on that, but I know that completely broke the hearts of the whole nation of America and the world, but specifically I think those in America and those who were living there at the time, even if they weren't in the towers, you know, the ones that could film it, could see the smoke, could see it. It's just horrendous, and it just should never have happened, ever have happened. That's all I'm going to say for now.
I agree with you, Liz. I think, you started this episode with "there was perfect." I really do feel like we need to see it from a compassionate side, that a lot of lives were affected by this. Like, it's huge. The loss, massive loss. And regardless what people may know or think about how it all went down, let's always remember that there are people out there who are innocent and have been affected, life-changing, like everything. So we always be mindful of those. But thanks for that, Liz. I mean that.
Obviously, this is always a difficult subject to talk about, like you just mentioned. A lot of lives were affected, especially in New York on the day, you know what I mean? Catastrophic to a lot of people. There's a lot of grey areas with all of it for me. A lot of things don't add up. A lot of things don't make sense. There's actually a documentary you can watch on Amazon that I've watched a couple of times. It's quite long. It's called The Myth and the Reality. On there, it's a guy who explains why all these grey areas are there. So he's asking a certain panel. I can't really remember what panel were from, but they're important people about these grey areas, and they didn't have an answer. So the fact that they haven't got an answer, so for example, one of the things that was found was a passport after the building had fell, one of the towers, passport supposedly found for one of the terrorists that hit with the plane. I pretty much find that impossible, like how a plane can hit a twin tower and a passport can be found after the building has fell. I just don't see how that's possible, you know? the way the tower falls, all of these things. I mean, there's even audio footage where you can hear like a boom, 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 almost like explosives are going off at a certain time. And even the American people that have got this camera and filming and hear that, say that sounds like explosives are going off. You have, I can't remember the name of the building that's right near the Twin Towers, that falls without being touched, like a demolition job. You know, if you watch demolition video and you see the way those drop, that drops exactly the same, like somebody had detonated underneath the building. And yeah, for me, I can't understand how the American Air Force in that whole area were all on a training exercise as well. So they couldn't react. And by the time they'd reacted, it was too late. For me, that's just too much of a coincidence. We're talking about one of the best air forces in the world, if anything. And you're telling me that a couple of terrorists, as they're saying, which they were, I must add, they were real quick to say it was terrorists before they knew any information, was able to hijack a plane without the American Air Force. But you on any given day, you fly into their airspace, you're going to know about it. They're going to be straight on you. So I just don't understand how that's happened. And then also the Pentagon weren't able to release any of the video footage from a plane hitting their building. Like, sorry, it got lost or destroyed. And I just thought, well, if you go, I haven't been to the Pentagon personally, but if you go to the Pentagon, there's like, I don't know, maybe 100 cameras around that building. You think there's some video footage somewhere. There was also one of the planes that ended up in a field, crashed. Almost looks like the plane never hit there, you know. And yeah, there's too many grey areas, way too many grey areas, which makes me sad. Because at the time when the buildings come down, you know, you had soldiers, you had all these people trying to help and come together in such a mad moment and believed that they were being attacked, you know, and all of these family members that have lost all these loved ones. If that was me, I would want to believe that we was attacked, that the person I loved died because somebody attacked them, and we're going to get them back because although that's not the right thing to do, revenge, that's going to almost help the way you feel, you know?
Yeah.
In a way.
Like sacrificial lambs.
Yeah. I just feel that they never answered these questions because those people hurt so much from this subject. They've never really sought the answer. But yeah, it's tough. Like I said, watch the myth and the reality, and then I'll, you know, watch that and you know, comment on what you've seen from there. That would be great to come on and comment on the video after watching that documentary as what you think. But for me, that just summed it up for me, that documentary.
Well put, Chris. I appreciate that you said all of that because there is so much great area, and the last thing you want to be doing is exposed to it if you're not ready for it. You know, like you said about the people that want to believe that they were attacked, they need to believe that lie because they don't want to accept that the people that we want to blame are actually our own governments. Now, before we go into any more detail on that, I just want to mention, like, Lucas, real quick. How old were you when this tragedy happened?
I was 8 months old, so I don't remember any of this. All of the information that I know is from secondary sources.
And that's really, really interesting too, because history, literally, the books of history are written by someone's perspective, right? If you were writing about, say, slavery back when it was like at its peak, most Black people weren't allowed to write. So we would have needed a righteous white person to tell our story. However, back then it was very, very rare to find one. So history can be written with a narrative of a gender. And, you know, for you, Lucas, being 8 months old when this tragedy happened and you're getting it all from second sources, it's going to be hard for you to put it all together, to know the truth. And yeah, as time goes on, in another 10 years' time, there may be someone your age watching this exact video where we're talking about it. So I think we need to do them justice and tell them what we know. Now, whether or not people believe what we know to be true, comment, say, speak your truth, you know, help us. We're exploring here and hopefully to educate the next generation. So I'm going to go in with inside job, huge buzzword that surrounds this tragedy, inside job, and why. Like Chris and I, we've been soldiers for quite a substantial amount of time in our lives. Chris done 9 years British Army Infantry, and myself 8 years British Army Infantry, together in the same regiment. And what they masked this tragedy as, and their response to, was the war on terror. The war on terror. So we're now being told, you know, we're under attack. Our nation is under attack. They have the capability to hijack airplanes and fly them into skyscrapers. We can't allow this to happen again. Now, if you've watched any of our previous episodes on conspiracies, even our latest one on the moon landings, where we highlight people see information and they believe it instantly because it's coming from what they would deem a reliable source. But obviously after this tragedy and eyewitness accounts and just science, just evidence presenting itself that, like Chris said, is gray. So you dig a little bit deeper, and I've dug a little bit deeper into this. And one of the things that was highlighted to me that kind of swayed me more towards believing it's an inside job is jet fuel. So aeroplane jet fuel burns at a certain temperature, but steel melts at a much higher temperature. So plain jet fuel cannot melt steel. It's just not going to happen because it's science. The evidence shows. So at what temperature, what do you need to melt steel, right? And where is it? You know, back to you, Liz, you spoke, you know, you introduced this topic, you brought it in very well.
When 9/11 happened, 2 weeks after 9/11 happened, I had to fly to America.
Wow.
I was in my late teens, so, well, about 16. And I had to fly on my own to go see my dad and spend a month with my family in America. It was already a pre-planned trip. So, of course, when I watched what happened come up on the news, I was instantly petrified of getting on a plane. I love flying, never been scared, but I was absolutely petrified because, like what you said, in my head, from what the media had thrown out there, we were under attack. It could happen anytime. So I had to fly to JFK in New York and then be around for a few hours and then fly on another flight to my dad. And before I went on my flight and before I went on this trip, I was of the belief, I was young, and I was of the belief that this was a terrorist attack, that they were dangerous people, that, you know, oh my gosh, at any time this could happen to any of us. When I went on my trip to America, I felt so much better because I actually saw a different perspective of it. Being around American people, and I was hearing about these grey areas, which wasn't on the media. I was hearing about, like, the things you were just saying about the fuel, about the steel, about the building, the way it came down. So I was hearing people's conversations. My dad was an ex-military man, and he said to me, I told him I was petrified. My phone call before I got on the flight, he was like, "You're going to be fine." You know, I got over there, and he said to me, they need to warrant a war, having a war. This was their warrant. This was their way of getting all of us to say, yes, go get them, agreeing to the atrocity that is war. And so I came back from my trip completely with a different perspective on it. And having been around, the American people were absolutely distraught, broken, angry, just completely disheartened by the whole thing, obviously, and the loss of life was absolutely tragic. And the innocent people, all of the innocent people involved, and I mean even people that went to work that day and put on a uniform, and they didn't come back home because they ran into a building to save other people, and they didn't make it out. And those who went to work that day in that building did not think that another human being, people in power, people in running the country, or outside sources would ever do something like that. So I went over there absolutely petrified, believing, and I'll be honest, everybody on that plane, apart from the little old lady that sat next to me, I believed could possibly be a terrorist.
Wow.
How awful is that? That I sat there and I mean, I was young, but I was also, I never thought I'd see something like this in my lifetime. And when I came back, I actually realized then that was the age and that was the time, 9/11 was when I realized the world isn't what we think it is.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized we need to, you know, look into the grey areas. We need to think more. We need to speak to people. We need to go to these places and actually learn from those people who have experienced these things and that were there, because they are who should be telling the stories, not the media and the newsreaders, you know, the people that actually lived it and that were nearby, you know, and like Chris said, those who heard the boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, go on, Chris, go on. Liz, that was very well. You highlighted a lot of things there, and I'm going to go back to those. But yeah, Chris, I want to ask you about when you said about, you know, other buildings being involved, because a lot of the focus was on the Twin Towers, but you know, you talked about buildings that fell down that weren't even touched.
Yeah, it's not being, it didn't fall from the impact of the Twin Towers. Obviously, they, you know, after this, saying the vibrations, this, you know, this ain't the small building either. You know, this is quite a big building that just basically falls. You know, like a building shouldn't fall. Like, say if a building falls down, right, it's gonna tip. Do you know what I mean? Without a demolition, this thing just falls like the Twin Towers. You obviously seen the way it drops, like almost like something's exploded at the bottom of it, so it comes down on top of itself rather than tipping.
It didn't collapse. It didn't fall sideways. It fell in itself.
Yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah.
Controlled explosion.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just cut in there? Would that not be like part of the design?
Go on. Yeah.
If it falls over, obviously where it lands is going to completely wipe out everyone. So maybe in the design of the Twin Towers, in the worst case scenario, it was designed to sort of go into itself instead of topple over and do collateral damage wherever it falls.
And that is a very good point, Lucas, which I was going to bring up later, but we're going to talk about.
Is that possible though? Is that possible with like, you know, gravity and everything? Is it not?
Yeah, because it's just a building. It will just fall in itself, unless there's a sideways force. I know the planes hit the building, but the size of the plane is minuscule compared to the size of the Twin Towers.
So you believe that? Well, so you're proposing that the building's been purposely built, so that should it take an impact like this or anything, that it will fall in itself.
Yeah, like worst case scenario. So they've sat down,
possibility, isn't it?
Around the table and said, if this is falling over, we want it to fall in itself, opposed to on another 5-6 buildings.
And that's a very good point, Lucas, and I will come back to that.
It is a good point, but why didn't they say that? That's the other good point.
And also, can I say, there are songs that were made way before this event happened that mention the Twin Towers.
We can go deep into the books of like even Nostradamus, for example.
Yes.
You know, he predicts a lot about what's going to happen. He had this power to see the future, and maybe not like spot on, like that's definitely going to happen on this day at this time, you know, by these people. But he was very, very, you know, mindful of what was going on. So yeah, that in itself, we could do an episode on that. But let's talk about what Lucas highlighted there. And obviously being someone who didn't experience it, he was 8 months old, guys, you know, when this happened. And saying what you're saying is great for exploring. So we mentioned in previous episodes, especially when it comes to inside jobs, like the moon landings, people kind of put things in place so that it would seem like that's actually how it goes down. That's how it's meant to be. Now, if you're in on this and, you know, you're building this building, if you were going to deploy a plan as big as this, and I'm going to mention now, but we'll come back to it, like Pearl Harbor, if you're going to execute a plan like that, years of planning has to go into this. It doesn't just happen with a group of 5 or 6 people. It may begin with a group of 5 or 6 people, but you need to ensure that there are people who are involved in the construction of this building who are, like we mentioned in previous episodes, sworn to secrecy, signed to secrecy. You and your whole firm of construction builders will be set for life if you build the building for us like this. And let's say on Monday to Thursday, you guys build, but we've actually got different subcontractors coming in Friday and Saturday to build it. You would say to yourself, okay, we'll take the job, but why can't we work Friday and Saturdays? Oh, because we've got someone else coming in to do it. I have heard, and I forget where I heard it, that was happening. And those different people that were building the building, coming in on different days, were coming in and, who knows, planting explosives in the structure of the building so that other builders would come in and do their work. They'd come in and then do their work. So it's always that gray area of, weren't we supposed to fill these walls? Oh, it looks like they've already done it. Well, that's a job. We don't have to do that job now. So inside the walls, they've been putting explosives for the next builders to come along and be like, okay, so now we can continue with the lighting, I guess. We'll just do the lighting. All right, and we'll do the lighting. And this was happening on every tier, every level. You guys just do the electronics, we'll handle the walls, or, and there you have it, almost like prepped. The building's now built, and we need to wait about 10 years before we can execute the plan. Because if we do it too early, too many people have been working there, they're too fresh, it's too fresh. Leave it 10 years now. You asked me what I ate for breakfast yesterday, I can't flip in, well, I try to remember, but you asked me what happened 10 years ago. Yeah, I remember faces, but I don't remember names. And to be brutally honest, I can't remember where I was actually working 10 years ago. Can't remember who was, I can't even remember who I was working with, let alone like the other builders. And that's probably why they left it so long. And also talk about precision timing, Nostradamus and, other books mention this. I even heard the Quran mention something like this. It happened when it happened. It happened when it happened. It was almost set. And then you hear reports of certain people, exclusive people, don't come into work tomorrow. Why not? Just don't come in.
Yes.
Just don't come in tomorrow.
I heard that when I went and traveled there, people were speaking about that. Certain people were told to have holidays at that time.
So not only,
and also the Pentagon, the plane that went there, that was apparently not part of the plan, was added in later on than the original plan before, to be almost like a distraction, but not a distraction obviously, because what happened was you can't really get distracted from that, but basically to add to it, to make it look like even more so there's these mad terrorists flying there into all these buildings. So they added that in for measure.
The structure of the building may well be built that way as a safety measure, safety precaution, granted. Makes sense. Makes sense. However, it wasn't built by one company. There were many, many different people involved in the construction of that building. So much so that they couldn't keep tabs. That's what I was then going to say. I think that's because they then couldn't kind of, if something were to come out and it was all to get dragged up, can't really cover you. It's too much disbursement of, Because if you're smart enough to put together a building that collapses like a controlled explosion, surely you'd be smart enough to create a building that can withstand something like an airplane going into it. Surely if you're that smart enough, you'd be like, right, we need a building so flipping good that if them 14 floors get hit and affected, the rest still stay. That building can stand and burn so that the department, the firemen can at least extinguish that, or even self-extinguish. The building should be that good. It should You'd like to think so. You'd like to think that after this event, they can build these underwater, like NASA buildings, and they can build Area 51 that nobody can get into. So let's talk about what Chris mentioned, and that is how the Royal Air Force was on a training exercise on that specific day. And it weren't just like, you know, Section 2 or whatever they have, battalions, regiments, I'm not sure with the Air Force, but everyone. And it does make you question, surely, even though, like, I've been on training exercises, doesn't mean everyone in HQ's got the day off. I'll be out on the ground. Doesn't mean that other people got their feet up thinking, yeah, everyone's on training exercises. Tell you what, let's just take the day off. No. While we're out training, you've got to do twice as much work because you're on your own. You're covering everyone else that's out there.
Yeah, you still think you'd have your quick reaction, your QRF, in case,
Go on.
you know, it's, you know, nothing might not happen. You know, it's probably really slim chance from anything like that happening or anything coming into their airspace. But you still have it because you never know.
So let's talk about airspace. And we mentioned, like, in previous episodes about how there's like this, like, for example, Russia being the biggest threat to America, according to James Bond's films and stuff, you know. Would you really let your guard down that much if the threat from Russia was like they mentioned? Yet you're getting threatened from someone from where? Al Qaeda. Behave yourself. You know, you just think you got this major threat and you let your guard down as if.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you've got like a plane, like even a private plane, and you take that plane off the ground and fly into the airspace, if you don't answer their comms when they're trying to talk to you, you are going to have an American jet come beside you and be like, land the plane now, because they don't trust what you're going to do because you're not answering them. So that's why they have it for so many different reasons. And I just think it's unbelievable. Obviously, they did react, but by this point, all the planes had done exactly pretty much what they wanted to do, you know?
You're absolutely right, Chris. I'd never heard that before, but you're so right. There's people with private jets out there. John Travolta is a pilot. That man loves planes. He flies his own private jets. And if he's in the air and he's bypassing New York, they're going to tell him, hey, John, mate, you're a bit close. And he's like, you know, it's me, it's John. He's like, fuck off, John. Get your ass over here. Otherwise, we're fucking shooting you down. And they're just like, you know, you're right, Chris. How the fuck did they get by? It is definitely, well, it makes sense to us. It makes sense to us. But yet, you know, there are people out there who we cannot convince otherwise. They need to believe what they need to believe.
And that's fine. That's okay if they want to believe that. Same as it's okay if we want to believe what we want to believe. Like going on a little bit of a tangent, my dad absolutely did not like George Bush, and specifically after 9/11. And a lot of people that mention his name, bring up a topic, have a little debate with them about George Bush. No. Have any of you seen, there's that documentary out about Jeffrey Epstein? He had or has a piece of artwork in one of his houses, or that was found in the house that he had on the island that was in the documentary. And it's a massive piece of artwork, and it's of George Bush with a little toy plane and towers, and he's flying it into the towers. And that was like one of his pride pieces of artwork. That just says it all to me. The fact there's artwork out there like that. Sorry, I don't like George Bush.
You know, you're right. For some reason, you can only blame the one that's seen to be the one to do the dirt.
And I know he's the puppet. I know that. But somebody had to do the instructions. Somebody had to.
Yeah, it's a very, very heartbreaking truth that when someone's got you by the balls, and threaten everything valuable to you, I couldn't be an American president. Not like Bush, not like Obama, or any of their predecessors. I just couldn't be them. The only one who really had any real power was Trump, and the media loved to crucify him because of that reason, because he doesn't own the media. And that's heartbreaking, because they had an opportunity there where they had a person in power who was actually for the people. But media influence can turn the people on their savior, just like Jesus Christ, just like Michael Jackson. You know, they're so good at it. They're ninjas at it. But let's go in with Bush there, not to defend a guilty man. He was the first president to actually shout out about global pandemic, though. Don't know if you know this. Little insight for you. He was raving about it when he heard about it. He actually tried to put together a program that needed a few billion to ensure that the American people, if affected by a global pandemic, were in good state for it. And no one backed him. You can look this up.
And now look where we are in a global
Exactly.
pandemic. And
Yep.
like you said, Jules, it was already pre-planned.
Right.
They were talking about it then.
Let's talk about these pre-planned things. So a control agenda method. I read a book by Andy Thomas called The Control Agenda. And just so you know, it took me 6 years to read because I kept dipping in and out of it. It covers all the conspiracies from crop circles to the pyramids to the Egyptians to 9/11, Stonehenge. I love it. It's a great book. Andy Thomas, Truth Agenda. Talks about the way they do it, the way they use these methods like problem, reaction, solutions. And one of the things they do is they pre-plan wars. Ruling elites pre-plan wars. And they need, like you say, Liz, earlier, to sway the public energy. They need us to want this war. And they do it purposely by instigating with, I'd mentioned it, and let's go in on it. Oh God. Pearl Harbor, good example. Like you said, Chris, they should have been on standby, should have saw it coming. It's impossible for them to get there and do what they did. But how? How is that possible? And what did that trigger? What did that incite?
Well, it's, at the time, the Americans wasn't properly involved in World War II before Pearl Harbor. So, and what the reason? What I suppose you've got to ask yourself, why wasn't they? Why wasn't America involved in World War II at that time? Because the people in America didn't see why they should be involved in it. So, you know, the American government can't go, we're going to send all of your sons, you know, fathers, all of these people over to fight a war that the American people didn't feel they needed to be involved in. So how do they do that? Well,
Make them feel affected by it.
yeah, really. So they let the chaps, it's horrible to think about, but, you know, they let Pearl Harbor happen and made a massive excuse that they didn't know it was coming. And how can you not know that's coming? And obviously it was horrible. But then it convinced the American people that we needed to get involved and give them what back, and they did, didn't they? I think they sent bombers into Japan, is it? And took out all of their factories and all that stuff. Suicide mission, basically. You know, those soldiers volunteered to hit them back. And I think quite a lot of them died.
And you want to know what's fucked up about it? This is what's fucked up about it. The governments have planned it. They've talked about it. Japan are prepared to take a loss, and America are prepared to take a loss just to orchestrate this war, knowing full well, come the end of it, we're all still pals. Yeah, people died, and yeah, things would, you know, it's fucked up. Really fucked up.
Yeah,
I can't get my head around as well that, you know, those guys got on those planes that day knowing full well that they were going to take those people's lives and that was all going down, and they were part of this mission. They were trained to do that. And I remember,
are you talking about the pilots of the plane, Liz? Talk about the pilots.
9/11. I'm talking about the hijackers.
Yeah.
9/11. And I remember there was a story that came out about an old lady pilot that came out and said that she'd had them on her airfield training to fly planes weeks before the event. And that she didn't realize that they were going to do that and that they were terrorists. I don't know if that's true, but I still think they already knew what they were going to do. They were trained to do it. It was going to go down, you know. And a lot of people have said to me, no, it was, you know, it was Al Qaeda, you know, it was not an inside job. They got on those planes, they came over, they want to terrorize us all. And I just, yes, I know that there have been many terrorist attacks all over the world. Again, the passports always seem to be there at the end of the day.
People
And I
need
just
to put a
can't,
face
I
to
just can't
terror.
get my head around it. Yes. And I just,
When people need to put a face to terror, it gives the people a target to blame.
yeah, I kind of have to see all the nitty gritty though. I have to have all of the evidence to believe something. And I just feel like I'm not easily led like that. I have to
So when they
kind of sift through it.
when they posted Bin Laden as the face of this face of terror, it gave the people someone to hate. It gave the people to channel their energy to, rather than the person that create. You know, it's almost like that's your person you want to blame over there, that guy, and everyone's like, that's the guy, get him. When in actual fact, it's your own president, but no one wants to believe that. Now, obviously, it's the same. You know, Marvel fan, when they had, I think it's Civil War, it might be Civil War, where it's the Mandalorian. Is it no, it's not Mandalorian. That's Star Wars, Jules.
Good program.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Chris?
Yeah, Mandalorian's decent.
Mandalorian Star Wars, but I'm talking about when they had this actor being a terrorist, and then Tony Stark goes to kill him, goes to the place where he is, and he's just an actor. Being Iron Man goes to kill him, and he's just an actor, being an actor.
Oh yeah,
Which
I've seen that one. He's literally that he catches them filming it.
Yeah.
And it's all completely pretend. Yeah, it's all set up.
It's the Mandarin.
Yes.
The Mandarin.
Is that number 3? Is
yes.
I think so, yeah. No, it's not Iron Man. Is it Iron Man 3? Might be. I thought it was Civil War.
2's with a Russian guy.
I think it's 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah. And it's the Mandarin. And basically what they're doing is they're creating a character. It is Iron Man 3. It is Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
And face to terror. Gives the people someone to blame.
Linking back to the Twin Towers though and 9/11, one thing that no one's mentioned yet, and something that stuck out when I was looking up about the conspiracies, there was one plane that was allowed to leave the States after 9/11, like immediately after. And when I first read that statement, I thought, oh, Air Force One, the president, we've got a president, he's got his Air Force One and he could go. But it turns out it was a commercial plane with Osama Bin Laden's family on. And if that doesn't scream conspiracy to you, I don't know what does. How on earth can you let a commercial plane with Osama Bin Laden's family leave the States after you have just experienced the worst terror event ever?
There's just too many things that just do not add up for it to just be a terrorist attack.
And linking back to what Jules said earlier about the steel and how it melts, they did analysis of the dust from the Twin Towers, and in the dust it was 5% iron, and you only get iron from melting steel. Obviously planes aren't made of iron, they wouldn't fly otherwise. The building wasn't made of iron, it had parts in of it that was iron, but it's not 5% worth. The steel had actually undergone a thermite reaction which produces iron oxide, and that is from melting steel. Effectively, that is what the reaction is. So there's no, and like Jules said, the aeroplane fuel doesn't burn at a high enough temperature to melt steel. So how on earth do you melt the steel to produce the iron in the dust that was seen and has been analysed without having some form of explosions within the building?
Yeah, read this.
Yeah, and those are the two things that stick out most for me.
I was unaware of that commercial plane. I didn't even know that until now. So thank you for shedding light on that, Lucas, because I never knew that about Bin Laden's family getting shipped off instantly. That's a bit, it's just too, it's the time frame wise. I mean, how coincidental? Because you would have thought all planes were stopped. You know, you would have thought, sorry.
It's when coincidence becomes like when it's in sync, when your events are in sync with each other and you get synchronization, that's when coincidence starts going, all right, hang on, what's going on here?
Too much of a coincidence. that they just found the passports after the rubble. Too much of a coincidence that, you know, jet fuel doesn't melt steel, yet the steel is now become iron. It's just too much of a coincidence that Osama Bin Laden's family are on the next commercial airline out of America within the space of a day. It's just too much of a coincidence.
I'm sorry, but those passports would have burnt. Come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, the steel
Unless
is
they were made of... Exactly.
too much of a coincidence. Right, guys, we've really gone in on that episode, and I'm glad we did, because we are the Elite Thinking Club and that's what we do. Now, if you feel like you've got anything to add to this episode, then guys, please comment and let us know, because we want to hear and we'll get back to you 100%. You know, back to the statement I made in the beginning, guys, like, we're not here to try and incite riot. We're not trying to make people wrong. We're just exploring. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you want to understand something, then you need to explore it. But I'm going to end the episode there. So if you haven't done so already, guys, hit that subscribe button for future episodes like this one, or check out our other episodes on conspiracies or anything else for that matter. But from me and everyone in the team, Lucas, Liz, and Chris, everyone everywhere, peace and love.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.
If you like that episode and you want to watch more, then guys, check out this one or this one, all on conspiracies. And also, if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. We really want to know what you think. So comment too. And everyone everywhere, yeah, from me and the team again, peace and love.